In this brief video, we'll talk about paraphrasing without plagiarizing. To do that, let's look at an example. This is a quote from Lisa Delpit's book, Other People's Children. Those with power are frequently least aware of or least willing to acknowledge its existence. Those with less power are often most aware of its existence. Let's read that one more time because we need this idea to stick to understand how to avoid plagiarizing when we try to use this idea in our own paper. Those with power are frequently least aware of or least willing to acknowledge its existence. Those with less power are often most aware of its existence. Now, it's important to note a few things about Lisa Delpit before we start using this information in our paper. First of all, she's actually at odds with many progressive scholars, not necessarily with this quote itself, they would probably agree with that, but in most of her work where she advocates things like teaching specific skills like where the commas go and correcting grammar, and all of the things that you think of as a traditional grammar school that have, in the years since grammar school was traditional, fallen out of vogue. Most progressive scholars now, although there is some pushback by Delpit and others, have abandoned those ideas of sentence diagramming and naming parts of speech for more holistic approaches that include things like telling stories and speaking in language that makes you most comfortable. It's also important to note, though, that while she's at odds with many progressive scholars, she has more experience actually teaching underprivileged and minority students than many progressive scholars. A lot of those progressive scholars end up working at prestigious universities where the students who they teach are, frankly, pretty brilliant, and if they did come from underprivileged backgrounds, often have managed to work their way through that and achieved academic success already merely by being at those prestigious universities. And finally, it's also important to note that her work has been criticized for reifying existing power structures. Now, that word reifying is kind of a tough one, and it's not necessarily clear what that sentence means if you aren't aware of the definition of that word. But the point here wasn't actually to tell you anything about Lisa Delpit at all, because you don't need to know any of this to use her quote effectively in your paper by paraphrasing it. All you need to do is take enough time away from it after having really committed the idea to memory in order to write it from your own with your own voice. And to that end, what did that blue slide say? What was the quote? Go ahead and pause here and try and write it out in your own words, and you might find it difficult to remember exactly what it said, but avoid the temptation of going back to look at it. Really just think about communicating the idea. Pause here and take a shot at it. Now, here's what I came up with after not looking at it for a while. Lisa Delpit points out in her book, Other People's Children, that if you have power, it's hard to see or even admit that you have it. But if you don't have power, the way you have to interact with other people makes it obvious that you're powerless. And then I have an MLA citation in here referencing the page number since I've already talked about the author and I've already talked about the title of the book. I can just put the page number in there. And that quote, again, is right below it. Those with power are frequently least aware or least willing to acknowledge its existence. Those with less power are often most aware of its existence. And you can see here that I have not plagiarized this text at all. I haven't copied the structure. I have not copied any series of words in order. I have done nothing here that would indicate plagiarism. I've also cited it because I am using her idea, but I haven't plagiarized it at all. I have put it effectively into my own words. It's not about whether I can go through and create synonyms or I can think of a creative way of restating what she already said herself. To avoid plagiarizing, if I want to paraphrase something, all I have to do is actually learn the idea, think about the idea, internalize it, and then give myself a little bit of space. If you give yourself that space, go for a walk, take a break, then it will be impossible to copy word for word, to copy phrasing, to copy sentence structure, to copy words in order in a way that would make you guilty of plagiarism.